Serious lawyers, what's a case you regretted winning? Attention! Serious tag notice. Jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted in any comment, parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit if you have any questions or concerns. In one of my first cases after passing the bar exam, a young man retained me on a drunk driving charge. No one was hurt, but he totaled his car. During trial, the arresting police officer testified that my client was clearly drunk at the accident scene, and that my client was loudly blaming the accident on the fucking asshole who stole his car, crashed it, and then fled before the cops arrived. However, according to two other witness statements tendered into evidence, it was my client's friend, the passenger, who was screaming about the asshole who stole the car, not my client, the driver. The cop must have confused the two men during his testimony. This discrepancy raised a reasonable doubt in the judge's mind, so she acquitted my client. At the time, the acquittal was somewhat unexpected for me. In my personal view, my client was clearly drunk and responsible for the accident, regardless of who was blaming the mystery asshole to the cops, but I was happy my young client got off, no one was hurt, and lessons were learned. And I was quite euphoric to have won my first criminal case. The regret? About a month after the acquittal, my young client called me at 3 a.m. from the police station saying it's me again. The police arrested me for drunk driving again. Can you help me? Not only did I answer no, I instantly regretted getting the earlier acquittal. My client apparently didn't learn any lessons. I did a divorce case 3 years ago. Everything was going well, but the mother wanted the father, my client, to have only supervised visitation. She couldn't state why, there were no allegations of any abuse, etc. Even her attorney told her it wasn't appropriate. So my client picked up their child, who was 3 or 4 if memory serves. He then proceeded to go to the top of 60-story building in Manhattan, threw the kid off and jumped after him. Right before Christmas. The mother was obviously overwhelmed, but made it a point of telling both myself and her attorney that she had no idea in a million years he would have done that. It helped, but I still feel guilty. As a personal injury attorney, I've seen a few clients win the blue-collar lotto or getting more money than they reasonably know how to deal with. I do my best to educate them, but my job is to try and maximize their recovery, not teach them finance. I have definitely contributed to a few drug habits. I do juvenile work, criminal law, and family law. I represented this client first when he was a juvenile charged with disorderly conduct at school and fighting, then when he became an adult it was for simple things like possession of marijuana. As he got older, it became easier and easier to figure out what part of his life hasn't gone as well as it could, and I tried to counsel him and push him to better himself. He got his GED, he started going to NA, he started classes at a community college, and found a part-time job. On the night of his 21st birthday, he was charged with a DWI. Of course I'll take care of that too. About 6 months later, we are due in court for trial, on a Monday, and he doesn't show up, which at this point in his life is highly unusual. As I'm trying to figure out where he is, the court starts going over arraignments/first appearances, and then lo and behold 3 people are up for murder charges. The prosecution starts to tell the judge what the facts/circumstances of the case are and mentions a few victims' names. Apparently, my client was at a party when these 3 individuals decided to allegedly do a drive-by shooting. My client suffered multiple gunshot wounds and didn't make it to the hospital. So, by default, as you can't prosecute a dead person, the state has to take a dismissal. I guess technically a win. Either way, it was crushing to me as I thought he had really turned his life around. There was a case that I saw that involved a claim with fee shifting, meaning that if the plaintiff won, their attorney's fees would get paid by the defendant. Defendant pushed an aggressive legal position at trial that the judge agreed with, and won, avoiding a few thousand in liability to the plaintiff and a few thousand in attorney's fees. So far so good. But then the plaintiff appeals all the way to the state's high court, requiring a ton of briefing and time. High court agrees with plaintiff, reverses and sends back to the trial court, which now enters judgment against the defendant for a few thousand in damages against the plaintiff and tens of thousands of dollars in attorney's fees from the appeal. The defense lawyer probably regretted winning at first on that aggressive argument to the trial court. Did a divorce where the husband, who I was representing, wanted to trade custody of his children for a set of bedroom furniture. The bedroom furniture was not even like a family heirloom. It was furniture that you could probably get at a Rooms to Go or something. Ugh. Still makes me ill. That's why I got out of family law. I won a summary judgment motion, that my firm filed not expecting to win. We had a decent argument, but odds were way worse than a coin flip, and judges don't like granting summary judgment because it's an extreme remedy. Client initially was thrilled, case is over. We tried to break the news gently, nope. 3 years later we're back in the same spot we were before we won our motion. The other side appealed it up to the state Supreme Court and won, because the Supreme Court said the trial judge should have denied our motion. So, we are back at square one. North of $100,000 in legal bills, with no resolution. Maybe it'll settle, maybe it will go to trial. I'll find out in the next 3 to 4 months. ETA, clarified my parenthetical. I got a spoiled brat of a teenager cleared of a shoplifting charge when he absolutely had done it. His rich parents hired me to represent him. I did that to the best of my ability, and we went to trial and won, but I can't say I felt good about it. This kid needed to be taught some accountability for his actions, and his parents just wanted to buy their way out of any trouble he got into. Family law is a little different in that you never really win per se. You may get more favorable rulings or better terms, but unless the opposing party did something illegal or mind-bogglingly stupid, it's never a decisive win really. Although I did have a case where my client fought really hard for the dog, and then ended up turning him over to a shelter. Fucking asshole. The ex-wife received an anonymous tip and was able to get him back quickly. I don't want to give away details because of where I work, but I will speak broadly about something that may or may not have happened. There are attorney guardians ad litem, GAL, who represent the best interests of children who have been adjudicated to be abused, neglected, or dependent. Dependent means that the child is dependent on state support. Think of both parents tragically passing without other family members. Part of the job is making recommendations to the court about when and in what manner children should be reunited with their parents after parents engage in services to prevent an incident from happening again. The child was abused. The parent did services for a year. The GAL recommended the child be returned to mom. Mom killed the child about a year later. That was a pretty sad one. The one where the client never paid. Edit. Clarification/explanation. When I was a young associate, I was assigned to do a civil commercial trial for a client that was not happy with the senior partner. He stopped paying. We moved to withdraw. The court refused to allow us to withdraw and forced us to go to trial. Spend a significant amount of time in trial prep, etc. I win the trial. Client never pays. Client's position was that my boss screwed up the deal and that there never should have been a dispute/trial to begin with. Firm policy prohibits us from suing clients because that causes a drastic increase in malpractice premiums. 9 times out of 10 if you sue a client for non-payment, they will countersue for malpractice. This probably won't be the best answer, but it is a real one. After law school I had to turn down a criminal defense job offer because my wife got a better offer somewhere else. So basically, I followed her along and was desperate to find something. After 3 months of fruitless efforts, I would take just about any job that required a JD, whereas literally the only thing I ever wanted to do was criminal defense. 3 months after moving I got an interview for a real estate litigation job. They hired me the next day. Looking back, that was probably red flag number 1. First day on the job they taught me how to foreclose on a claim of lien. These are 2 things I had never heard of before. Turns out, it is totally brainless work if you have the right forms, mind-numbingly boring, basically just cutting and pasting new addresses and amounts owed. So anyways, it took me about 2 months to realize this, when I had my first set of hearings, but literally my sole purpose at the firm, which represented over 100 homeowners associations, was to take people's houses away for not paying their homeowners association dues. After my first set of foreclosures, I actually slipped into a pretty legitimate depression. I was getting paid peanuts to drive nearly an hour to work every day to do work I despised on behalf of people I literally could not pretend to care about. The straw on the camel's back was when I started signing the foreclosures and realized I was that guy. Yeah, no. I understand someone has to do the work, I guess. There certainly is a lot of money to be made, but it was not for me. I did that job for 3 months, came home one Friday, and told my wife I'd rather be homeless than go back on Monday. By some stroke of luck, I started a stellar criminal defense job within 2 weeks, and all of the heartache has 100% been worth it. I've won a lot of cases. You have to redefine winning and losing when doing criminal defense, because sometimes even a particularly juicy plea is a win-imo, and never once felt bad about it. For example, I got a guy's plea deal cut from 60 years to 15 years for a string of robberies where the interrogations and confessions were overwhelmingly unconstitutional, like, the interrogations were textbook how not to do an interrogation, Missouri v. Seibert, and stuff like that. Never lost sleep over someone not going to jail. So yeah, every case where I took someone's house away, probably 24 times, for not paying HOA fees, generally $4,000 or less, was the worst case I ever won. Fuck HOAS. I did some custody work early in my career and won some cases more on the merit of my trial skills than on the merit of the parents. The thing with family law work in general is that there is essentially no bar to entry. Anybody with a law degree and a pulse can get a family law practice up and running quickly because there is just an absolute glut of work. What that also means is that 75% plus of the lawyers practicing family law are clueless and awful. Early in my career I certainly was clueless, but at the least I was not awful. Therefore, in a battle between clueless and awful versus just clueless, clueless usually won. So yeah, I can't recall any specific cases, except to say that fighting over children in court is a terrible thing and basically everyone loses. I regret that entire portion of my career. I wouldn't say I regret this so much as to this day it amazes me. As a first-year associate I was given a terrible pie case where my client received a flu shot and thereafter felt pain in his shoulder. He went to another doctor who performed an MRI and determined he had a torn rotator cuff, which was undoubtedly not related. My job was to allege the flu shot caused the rotator cuff tear. Our ortho actually correlated the two, which is the more regrettable position, and the case paid out. Being the bottom of the totem pole I had no choice but to take the case, which was handed down by a partner. But at the same time, just overwhelmingly made me feel like the worst stereotyped attorney and just hated having to walk into court on it and feel my reputation being destroyed. Women wanted her daughter custody. We used the state preference about custody going to the mother, judge bias, her improved economical situation, and some minor garbage like her grades and discipline problems at school to discredit the dad. Not even a month after we won, the mother calls and says she had a problem. Then she explains the problem was that her BF raped the girl, and after that she had the gall to ask we pick up his defense. One of the things that made me quit to gov work. Guy lost his wife and children in a car accident. He wanted to exercise to get his emotions and mental health back in check. Doctor wrote him recommendations for exercise equipment, ball, chin-up bar, nothing crazy, and he submitted the expenses for same to his insurer. Client, insurer/adjuster, wanted this fought tooth and nail because exercise equipment was only covered for physical rehab and he was not physically injured. I do not practice in this area anymore. Had this happened to me twice. Got my client out on bail only to thereafter have him up and killed. First time, he was in building supposedly selling, got chased by the police and a struggle ensued where he was shot point blank in the head. Mother told me that it was my fault that he was killed and that I was working with the DA and the police. Second time, a young man no more than 16 gets released while waiting trial on robbery. One of the conditions of release was that he maintain a curfew. That very night he breaks curfew, goes over to somebody else's house and was killed in a drug-related robbery. Mother blamed me and said that the devil was working through me, that we were all demons. Criminal defense is a hard business. Prosecuted a murder case. 21-year-old kid starts dating an older guy's ex-girlfriend. The older guy, real roughneck, loose connections with a local biker gang, was going all over his small town talking about how he was going to kick the kid's ass. The older guy sends some nudes of the ex while he's getting drunk at a bar, so the kid says something smart ass in response. Older guy comes to the kid's house to fight him. The kid shoots him once, and the older guy dies. Jury didn't buy self-defense or castle doctrine. Convicted of voluntary manslaughter. 20 years. Burned up his appeals with no luck. I have a son about the kid's age. I could totally imagine him doing the exact same things if he were in a similar situation. Shit's going to haunt me until I die. No doubt about it. Started thinking about other work the moment the verdict came back. Was representing the government at a social benefits tribunal. The applicant was an autistic man who was struggling to make ends meet but was trying his absolute best to contribute everything he could to society. He had a job where his manager was very accommodating and he was a very sympathetic person. He just wanted the extra cash to make his life a little easier for himself. Sadly, he didn't qualify for the benefit, but I think he deserved it. My closing argument was that no matter how much we empathized with this man, no matter how deserving we thought he was, he simply didn't qualify and the tribunal had to apply the law. He was unsuccessful, and when I left the building to head back to my office he was just sitting outside on the curb crying. That image has stuck with me for a few years. Pretty heartbreaking. Edit. For those of you that are sending me words of support, thank you. That was the lowest point in my career and I have moved on. It's really important to remember that mental health in the legal profession is a very real issue that is killing people. There aren't sufficient supports in place to help people like me and many others who find themselves in positions like this. For those telling me I'm a horrible person, you literally can't say anything that will make me feel worse about this, so please have some compassion. I work elsewhere and provide a much needed service to my country and my community. I also donate to a mental health charity on a monthly basis. What are you doing to fight unfair systems? Also, in case you aren't aware, social benefits are a finite resource. Often, the criteria for qualification are strict. Not everyone can receive it, otherwise there wouldn't be enough to go around. The particular system I was working in was a needs-based system. Those with the most severe disabilities met the criteria and I often advocated on their behalf despite the government's initial position if I felt they met the criteria. I work in medical malpractice defense. Once I had an obstetrician/gynecologist who burned a patient during a procedure. When I met with the doctor, he lied to me throughout the representation over 16 months, saying he had no idea how it happened. There is a doctrine in law called residential ipsa, meaning absent some sort of negligence, this accident could not have occurred. Woman came in without a burn, and after the procedure, the woman left with a burn. There's no way this doctor didn't know what had happened. The area of the burn was where he was operating on. It wasn't until I brought up settlement, because this was not a case we could win, did he say, "Oh, maybe I do know what happened." We ultimately settled that case, which is considered a favorable outcome considering the potential high monetary verdict. Sometimes I think this doctor really ought to have lost that case and their license. I sued a guy on behalf of JCPenney credit card for $1,500. All he bought was a VCR and a shirt. He pissed off the judge and she ruled against him. Family law custody battle. They are never good and are almost always about money and vengeance. I helped a man regain visitation of his child after a year or so in jail. I thought I was a great humanitarian. Oh, the hubris that comes from being a baby attorney. As we were shooting the shit after court waiting for his ride, he showed me his prison tattoo, giant letters on his torso that spelled war, white Aryan resistance. I'm a blue-eyed blonde, so I guess he thought I was down with the cause. I went home and threw up.